Hello learners, welcome to the module on governance, emerging perspectives. In the earlier module, a conceptual clarification of the concept of governance was provided, followed by a discussion on governance in the Indian context. When discussing social legislation in any nation, governance and the process of governing must be addressed. The term governance has gained prominence in recent years linked to the enhancement of governmental activities, the implementation of measures and the improvement of performance in both economic and societal contexts. In the context of framing policies, governance has become a tagline. More academic literature began to emphasize the concept of governance, highlighting the role that non-state actors play in local, national and global governance. The utility of governance can be applied in various contexts, including corporate, international, national and local. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, while explaining governance, stated it as the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. The understanding and the perspectives of governance are evolving day by day. In this module, we are going to cover some of the emerging views of governance. In this module, let us know about the following. They are approaches in governance, governance at the system and agency levels, emerging views on governance, specifically governance and development, sustainable human development and governance, governance for the conservation of nature and quality of governance with special reference to good governance and how it is there in new and emerging technologies. So, while discussing that, we will be linking it with information and technology and governance, then media and governance. Let us start with governance approaches. Jane Koyman and Martin Babnik identified three common features of governance, and they are: the first aspect is the belief that both public and private actors are involved in governing. Governance is traditionally seen as an obligation of government at all levels. In the public interest, governments have the resources, money, personnel, laws and procedures to carry out a wide range of public activities, but other actors outside governments can address societal issues and opportunities. The options are endless, starting from the individual level through voluntary organizations, companies, councils at the village level, international organization, political parties, etc. They are involved in promoting the development of society. The second one is governance approaches highlight that distinction between public and private sectors are often ambiguous and interests cannot be categorically classified as public or private, as they are frequently shared. In this feature, they emphasized that there was no shrinking of the government's role and it is viewed as more shifting. The tasks of the government are rearranged or reorganized to increase awareness of other societal actors, but this does not distract or reduce the government's responsibility as outdated. The commitment of the broader set of actors and approaches is realized. The shift from the command and control form of governing to wider participatory approaches is required. As a continuation of the second aspect, the third common element in the understanding that societal progress is the foundation of governance. In particular, the rise in social, economic and political interdependencies as well as trends like localization, globalization, integration and differentiation are reflected in the status of contemporary governance. The outcome of this process implies expansion in chains of interaction enlarging across different scale levels and sectors. This increases the participation of actors and sectors, thus multiplying the interactions between the augmented actors. Governance approaches are different from those of management and policy making. However, the differences are not straightforward and unequivocal. Koeman and Bavinck use governance as an inclusive term, followed by policy and finally by management. Though management and policy making are considered prominent, governance goes beyond the problems to contemplate longer term societal trends and needs. Focus of problem and solution and interest in the certain creation of utilization of opportunities are the basic aspects of governance. It strikes a balance between difficulties and troubles with new, intriguing and hopeful opportunities. Institutional frameworks for regulating activities and the guiding normative ideas are given systematic consideration in governance. Further, they view governance as both what is and what should be, reality as well as potential. It is primarily interested in governing as a real life phenomenon. In the process of governance, problems and opportunities develop all the time and are handled more or less effectively by people and by institutions. Overall, the governing system, the basis of actors engaged in governing, is usually diverse, complex and dynamic as is the system to be governed. In explaining governance in the fishery context, they define governance as follows. Governance is the whole of public as well as private interactions taken to solve societal problems and create societal opportunities. It includes the formulation and application of principles guiding those interactions and care for institutions that enable them. They propose a new interactive governance perspective where an interaction is viewed as a specific form of action performed by the actors to create a new pathway. In social sciences, society is viewed as components consisting of actors in large number and a structure that facilitates and inhibits the actions of actors. In an interaction, two or more actors influence each other with a planned and a structural dimension. The interaction acts as a dynamic function that moves towards a goal, but the established structure can be at a constraint. Thus, interaction can have intended or unintended results. This may be because the goals, purpose and interests of actors and between actors can conflict with the structural situation. Therefore, governance is not only the governance do, but it is an attribute of all interactions between the governing and the governed. It is an interaction in and of itself. Now we can see the orders, levels of governance. Now let us discuss the levels of governance based on its theoretical orders, which are viewed as concentric circles in the construction of an onion comprising 3 levels. We are having first order, second order and meta governance. The insights are taken from Koeman and Bavinck to understand these orders. The outer ring, the first order, governing occurs with the interaction between people and organization to solve problems and create new possibilities for society. In the second order, the emphasis is on institutional arrangements. That is, it sets the framework for the first order, which can be systems of agreements, rules, rights, laws, norms, beliefs, roles, procedures and organizations that are utilized for decision making by the first order. The third order or the meta governance is the center of the onion that feeds, binds and evaluates the entire governing exercise. Rationality is the fundamental principle of meta governance, which holds that ruling must be based on verifiable facts, a logical selection of tools and a strategy that can be defended. The next thing that we are going to discuss is mode or styles of governance. Based on Locus, Koyman and Bamnick distinguish the modes of governance into three. They are hierarchical governance, self-governance and co-governance. Hierarchical governance is the conventional model of governance. The interaction in this style happens between a state and its citizens. As it is a traditional model, it is based on a top-down approach of intervention which mainly relies on policies and in law. Steering and control of the key concepts of this approach. Next comes the self-governance. In the present context refers to the condition in which actors take care of themselves outside the horizon of government. This is universal phenomena quite distinct from government intention or policy. The third one is co-governance. In this style, the key component of this method of governance is that social actors unite with a shared goal in mind, stake with uniqueness and autonomy in the process. Now we can see the governance at the system and agency levels. Edwards, Halligan, Horrigan and Nicole distinguished governance in the period between 1980s and the 2000s. The three reform phases are managerial, new public management and integrated governance. Reform dimensions take into account the consideration by authors were the central concept, reform focus in the core public service, reform focus in outer public sector, general trends, public-private trends and public engagement. We can see one by one. Managerialism. In 1980s, traditional administration was replaced by a set of management based reforms during the first phase of reform. For a period of a decade, a new management philosophy was created and put into practice, focusing on results over inputs and procedures. The key component of this reform is making the public sector run more like a business. Major organization status saw substantial changes as a result of corporatization drive that began in the late 1980s, whether through formation as firms or government-based enterprises. New public management. In the 1990s, after transformation in the international administration, the public sector became heavily decentralized, market-oriented, contractualized and privatized as a result of commitment to neoliberal economic reforms. By the mid of 1990s, the necessity for market-oriented reform was increasingly recognized, which made this new reform stage most noticeable. The focus of this phase includes competitive neutrality between the government and the business sector and the structural reform of public monopolies to allow competition between providers within sectors. Then comes the integrated governance. Integrated governance, the new phase began in the 2000s, affected the public services relationships, coherence, delivery and implementation, performance and response to government policy. The authors identified 4 dimensions to draw together fundamental aspects of governance. We can see one by one. Revival of central agency as a major actor with more direct effect over departments. Whole of government as the new expression of a range of forms of coordination. The third one is central monitoring of agency implementation and delivery. And the last one is departmentalization through absorbing statutory authorities and rationalizing the non-departmental sector. This phase of governance is more in state-centric mode. But after the 2010s, the perspective of governance transformed to the next phase, which is known as a collaborative governance, where the emphasis was on society-centric. On the other hand, while analyzing the levels of governance, the concept of governance at the macro level has a description of public governance with its focus on society. The meso-level description of governance was public sector governance focusing on government. When viewing governance at the micro level, portrayal was the corporate governance which focused on the organization. In the public sector, corporate governance refers to the management of organizations within the sector as well as the management of their relationships and interactions with people both inside and outside the sector. The term corporate governance refers generally to the procedures, laws and rules that govern how businesses are run, governed and controlled. It has both internal and external factors. Internal factors are defined by the officers, stakeholders or constitution of the corporation, and external factors are consumer groups, clients and government regulations. Now we can see the emerging views on governance. Many developed and developing countries and states were interested in the concept of governance, and various interpretive applications were made. Notable initiatives include administrative reforms, process re-engineering and restructuring, decentralization of powers, accountability and transparency mechanism and e-governance enterprises. In this section, we can discuss the emerging views of governance. To start with, we saw the relationship between governance and development. Development is the buzzword of the recent decade, where achieving heights in the ladder of development is the aim of the entire world in general and nations in particular. In the debate of development, significant emphasis is placed on governance. As we all know, the state plays an important role in the process of development, and to raise efficiency, the state has evolved alternative mechanisms like policy making and public-private partnership to ensure development. These brought transformation in the approach to development, specifically in the economic sector. To achieve development, governance is regarded as the strategy for development. Development and governance have a common core theme, which is for the benefit of the citizens, and they complement each other. Participation is an alternative development initiative with an inclusive nature for an empowerment process. Good governance, as we discussed in the earlier module, is to do with the quality of having a key components of accountability and transparency. Public action or increased participation in the governance process can guarantee and strengthen governance. India's initiative of the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments allow people's participation in local governance, the decision-making process and in the development process too. Development is facilitated by good governance, and development in turn guarantees the continuation of good governance. People's awareness influences the implementation of development programs. The Right to Information Act of 2005 empowered citizens to claim information from officials, and the common man can exercise governance at their doorstep. People's participation has also resulted in a substantial and qualitative shift in the process of development and its effects on the broader society. Now we can see the relationship between governance and sustainable human development. The United Nations Development Programme (UNDP) believes there is a relationship between the capacity for good governance and the way to eliminate poverty. However, there are significant differences in how development practitioners and scholars define good governance and the link between governance and sustainable human development. There are 5 aspects to sustainable human development, all affecting the lives of the poor and vulnerable. We can see it one by one. The first one is empowerment. The expansion of men and women's capabilities and choices increases their ability to exercise those choices free of hunger, want and deprivations. It also increases their opportunity to participate in or endorse decision making affecting their lives. The second one is cooperation. With a sense of belonging important for personal fulfillment, well-being and a sense of purpose and meaning, human development is concerned with how people work together and interact. The third one is equity. The expansion of capabilities and opportunities means more than income. It also means equity, such as an educational system to which everybody should have access. Then comes sustainability. The needs of this generation must be met without compromising the rights of future generation to be free of poverty and deprivation and to exercise their basic capabilities. Then comes security, particularly the security of livelihood. People need to be free from threats such as diseases or repression and sudden harmful disruptions in their lives. UNDP focuses on 4 critical elements of sustainable human development. They are eliminating poverty, creating jobs and sustaining livelihoods, protecting and regenerating the environment and promoting the advancement of women. Developing the capacities for good governance underpins all these objectives. The process through which members of society exercise power and authority, exert influence and implement laws and regulations of public life, economic growth and societal development is known as governance. Governance for the conservation of nature. The another perspective of governance is how it is to do with conservation of nature. Borenin, Ferdinand and Hill discussed that governance for the conservation of nature seek a balance between the requirements of the human and economic development and those of conserving biological diversity. Governance involves both practice, that is, the actual actions of humans prompting nature, and policy, stated intentions supported by authorities. It deals with the complex network of settings that produce both matches and mismatches between the two, including communication, understanding and the distribution of power and resources. The major international policy expression are the Convention of Biological Diversity and the UN Framework Convention of Climate Change. For environmental conservation, new and emerging actors and collaborations with newly approved policies and practices are to be established on the ground, which are clear signs of improved diversity and quality of governance. Furthermore, the relationship between the surrounding landscapes and seascapes provided invaluable assistance in navigating persistent difficulties and global change. A human right based approach which respects a variety of procedural and substantive rights was suggested by the authors for striking a balance between justice and acquired rights, stability and innovation, local meaning and values, and more general liberal values. According to them, for nature conservation, governance can emerge from participation to improve its diversity, quality and vitality with conscious and participatory efforts. Now we can move on to the next part of the presentation, that is quality of governance, that is good governance, new and emerging technologies. Good governance is the strength of an organization which ensures that daily operations are always in line with the organization's objectives and consistently steers the organization towards a vision. With the rule of law, good governance, which is accountable, transparent and participatory, can be efficient and just. The priorities of good governance in a society are political, social and economic, where the decision making over resource allocation in the process of development is inclusive of poor and vulnerable. Now, we can see the relationship between information technology and governance. For the empowerment of the people, an inclusive development strategy has to be evolved in contemporary society. Information and communication technology, that is ICT, is one such tool for the empowerment process. The emergence of ICT enabled governance models and techniques for monitoring communication and assisting in the formulation and implementation of policies is transforming the functions of the government in the information age. ICT, as we are aware, is to do with information, where the possibility of transparency is high and accountability is guaranteed, which helps in decision making. When people have access to information, it encourages them to participate and increases the delivery of public goods and services effectively. Government, civil society and other stakeholders employ ICT interventions to create awareness of their rights, duties and privileges. The Department of Electronics, which was established by the Indian government in 1970, and National Informatics Center NIC, which was launched in 1977 as the initial step in e-governance deployment. Since then, the Government of India on a regular basis launched several initiatives for governance using ICT. To list recent initiatives, we have the Digital India Initiative, which was launched in 2014 to transform India into a digitally enabled and empowered information driven society as the Digital India Program, that is DIP. Digital accessibility to villages, phone connectivity, digital inclusion in governance and e-services are some of the features of DIP. Online payment, National Scholarship Portal, DigiLocker, etc. are some of the projects on the Digital India Program. Then comes the Smart Cities initiatives. Smart Cities initiatives use ICT to improve the quality of the structure and functions of the city. The utilization of ICT interventions advances the quality and performance in services like energy, electricity, water supply, transportation, waste management, etc. of the cities. Then we are having this Internet of Things, that is IoT. IoT is a link between software and the hardware aspects of ICT in terms of telecom and electronics industries respectively. Hardware or the network of physical objects include devices, vehicles, buildings and is embedded in the software, sensors and network connections. In the Indian context, it is useful in manufacturing, automotive, transportation and logistics. The application of IoT initiatives is in smart surveillance, automated transportation, smarter energy management systems, water distribution, urban security and environmental monitoring. The goal of governance facilitated by information and communication technology is to influence how work is structured within organizations. The majority of administrative best practices build upon the process, redesign and convergence made possible by ICT. Public services dissemination can be done effectively with the support of ICT. The change introduced by ICT is more transformational than technical, as it is to increase the efficiency of work processes and services at a lower cost. The future administrative roadmap is based on the perspective of networking organizations and information systems, with the administration working on a networked horizontal structural base, leaving hierarchical command structures. Media and governance. Media in its different forms convey the information related to the state to the people and make it accessible to them, whether it is legislative or administrative proceedings. The popular media to disseminate knowledge about governance are print media, broadcast media and the internet. The media has the role and responsibility of creating awareness among the public regarding the protection of human rights, restricting corruption, introducing new rules of law and promoting people's participation. On the other hand, the media also has the accountability to check the government's action and opening it up to the public for their voices and concerns. Now, we can see some of the roles of media in good governance in recent times. First and the foremost, the role of media is to create a platform for freedom of expression. The improvement of state-citizen relationship and the state's responsiveness to citizens must be the media's next priorities. The media also have to promote discussions and debates by disseminating accurate and reliable information. Thus, the media have the responsibility in promoting democracy and the rule of law of the nation, involving the people to participate in the governance, in creating public opinion with reliable facts, should have accountability and act as change agent and secure, protect and promote human rights. Now, we are in the last part of our presentation, that is to sum up. Governance, which was traditionally viewed as a government's duty, is perceived in a broader spectrum in recent years, involving the public or the citizens into it with the support of civil society. In this module, we saw the approaches of governance from the point of view of Koyman and Bavnik. On various levels, governance can be classified as modes and styles, and further its emergence from managerialism, new public management and integrated governance was discussed from the views of Edwards and et al. Governance from a development lens was deliberated, where 2nd and 73rd Amendment, Constitutional Amendment of India, is seen as a strategy for inclusive development with people's participation and accountability. With UNDP's view, sustainable human development and governance are linked and discussed in this module. Governance in contemporary society is applied to nature's conservation. It is also dealt with in this module. Further, the role and responsibility of information and communication technology and media in governance are also discussed for better understanding of the emerging perspective of it in the Indian context. Thank you, dear learners. Hope the module is informative to you, and we can meet in the upcoming modules on latest initiatives in governance, specifically e-governance and corporate social responsibility. Bye-bye.